Hashem Svasai Tiftach Ufia Gitlasacha. We're now in the 8th parak of Hoshea. This parak, like the prior prakim, all have messages that we can internalize for ourselves and not just what Hoshea perhaps is referring to for the people to prevent them from having the Chorban. In this parak, it starts, Al chivcha shofar kenesher al beis Hashem, ya'anav rubrisi al torasi pasha'u. Yes, bring and blow a shofar, but like a vulture, Hashem is going to swoop down and Hashem is going to punish Bnei Israel. You're blowing a shofar, you're pretending perhaps that you are looking to Hashem, but that's not real. And so you can put a shofar in your mouth, but Hashem is still going to come and Hashem is still going to punish you. Why? Arub receive es torasi, because you transgressed against the bris and against the Torah. There's a relationship that we have with Hashem that is not just to do the laws and the mitzvos, but it's also to connect to Hashem. You don't connect to me, says Hashem, and you don't follow the rules. And what do you do instead? Yizaku Elohei Yaduni Cha Yisrael. Instead, you say, we know you, but really, no, you don't. You're pretending, you're giving lip service. Your daily lives have nothing to do with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Instead, you follow other things. You follow other things that you think are going to help you. The oyev, the enemy, that could be any sort of temptation, any physical pleasure, any actual person. And him lichu, you anoint them, you put them as the melech instead of me. V'lo mimeni, hisharu v'lo yadati. You put kaspam, zahavam, asulahem atzabim laman ikares. But instead, what do you know? You do silver, gold, and that's what you do. You build that up. And because of that, you're going to be cut off. Now, you're going to be cut off Yehuda, you're going to be cut off the rest of the 10 tribes, because there is this idea that Hashem has to punish, because how long, lo yachlu nikayon, are you not going to be able to clean yourselves? How long are you going to be in the position where you are doing things that are not good for you and you can't get cleaned from them? And we have a reference here to the kings and to the officers. You know, in history, if we have a bad king, if we have a bad leader, it's also on us to replace them, to say, you know what, no, they're not doing what's right. And so Yisrael are responsible for that. We are responsible for our own decisions. And when we don't make those good decisions and we allow for there to be bad influences among us, that's on us. Zanach aglech shimron chara api. And so, yes, what do you try to do? So sometimes you try to worship the right things, but it's lip service. It's not real. You know, there are people that are, what does it mean when we're taking our money and we're using it not for the good? So here would be an example of people who build huge shuls, but they're architecturally beautiful, but they're not mitzvah beautiful. Instead, they could hire people to be learning or focus on tefillah and davening, but that doesn't seem to happen. What seems to happen is this reliance on all the wrong things that might be beautiful, that might shine bright, but are really not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is asking from us. And he goes down to describe that in history, how could you really rely on the things that you create, things that are man-made? And it references, if we think about that story with Terach and Abraham, that Abraham destroyed all of the idols of Terach, and then he put the hammer in the hands of one of the idols, and Terach's like, yeah, that could never have happened. It couldn't be that the idols don't destroy other idols. They're not capable. And Abraham's like, okay, so if that's the case, why in the world would you believe in these idols? But that's just what happens. And this idea of really putting stock and faith in those things that do not have the potential to give us growth or to solve our problems. That's one element. The next element is just in nature. When nature doesn't go well for us, we blame nature, but it's really HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When you planted, Hashem says, and you can't reap what you sow, there's nothing to be had. The farmers don't have. Instead of, blaming it on the insects or the rain power, go deeper to the source. Everything that happens is from me. Hashem did not leave the building. He is still there. And you have to be able to understand what this is. If not, then what happens is Zarim Yivalehu. Your strangers, other nations will swallow you up. You will no longer have an identity. We know that if the Jews don't make Kiddush, the Goyim will make Havdalah. We will be, and they will not treat us well. And all throughout history, when Yisrael was swallowed up in the Goyim, and Kekli Ein Chafetz Bo, what's the worst thing that could happen is that they're thought of as having no purpose, that they are not a benefit, because what happens ultimately with that is pogroms and Nazi, because we're dehumanized, and when we're dehumanized, we can be treated even worse by our enemy. And that's what actually happens. And so when you look to the other enemies, Hashem says, you're going to be, ultimately, you're going to be the one that is useless, and they will get rid of you, and they will treat you badly. And it's compared to Pareh Bodedlo, a wild donkey. Why are we compared to a wild donkey? So Rabbi Rosner mentions that there's a concept of that you're poded the donkey, Peter Rechem, where if there is the oldest donkey, you redeem with a sheep. And if you don't, you have to break its neck. What does that really mean emotionally or philosophically? That means that Hashem wants our potential. And if you're not going to give him your potential, then you're useless. And so here too, you're useless if you don't go to your potential of being an Orla Goyim and that Hashem, the relationship that you have with Hashem, because it's so special and it makes you something special. If not, then you're not going to get anywhere. The nations are not going to accept you. And the idea that you're going to seek solace from them. They sought help from Egypt, and they went back to Egypt, and doing that was a disaster for them. They wanted Ashur's help. That was a disaster until Ashur came through. Bavel, wipes them out. It's every nation that you could possibly try and you give gifts to them and you try is not going to reap anything. And it's also because Pasuk Yud Aleph Ki Hirbeh Ephraim Mizbachos Lachto. Not only did you have the regular Mizbachos of the kings who formed them. Oftentimes they formed them in Yisrael so that the Jews wouldn't come to the Beis HaMikdash and they wouldn't be positively influenced. But they also did it on their own. And so there's clearly that they're with the same wave of against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Echtov lo rubas Torasi, that the Torah is written as a law. It's not common sense. And so if you try to interpret it as what it applies to, what it doesn't apply to, that makes sense, that doesn't make sense, Zar Nachshavu, it's not going to be something that could be possibly considered. And so really Hashem then says, I don't want your lip service. I don't want the fakeness of your mizbachos and of your zvachim. I don't want your meat, and you're going to eat it anyway because ultimately it's not authentic. And so what happens is Hashem doesn't want it, and so he says, you go eat it. You're eating it anyway. You don't really. I'm not in the equation. And it's as though Hema Mitzrayim Yeshuva, as though you return to Mitzrayim, you return to this base low level of before Matan Torah, before we were given this beautiful relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vayishkach Yisrael et aso, Hashem forgets who created it, and ultimately builds fortresses and cities, and Hashem just comes and destroys all of them because to show it's not real. Ultimately, this is a lesson in our lives. What do we give credence to? What do we believe in? Do we believe in ourselves only? Do we believe in the power and the kavod of other people? Do we believe that our connections with people and their power really are going to make a difference? Do we put stock in the mitzvos, or do we put stock in the physical things that we think are ultimately important? Where we put our importance is on us. And we can't blame leaders. We can't blame our environment. Hashem says, I have a relationship, and an individual relationship with each and every one of you. And if you're going to break it, that's on you. But I'm not going to support this, Hashem says. I will bring you down, not because I want to, because I love you. And because otherwise, like he said, there's no nikayon. There's no other cleansing process except to bring you down. And so when you're planting and you don't have any results in the things that you do, just know it comes from Hashem. And perhaps that is the time to look and to introspect and to see oneself. What is it that I could do differently to cling to Hashem, so that Hashem, the Borei Olam, the one who is in control over everything, can ultimately impact on my life in a way that is positive.